Claire Thompson woke up before dawn, the same way she had done every day for years. Her small house in Minnesota always felt quiet in the early morning, and she usually liked it that way. It gave her a moment to breathe before stepping into her busy life as a nurse. But this morning felt different. There was an extra presence in the house, her nephew Ethan, who had arrived the night before and had already shifted the rhythm of her normally predictable home. Ethan was 22, polite, calm, and much more thoughtful than most people his age. He was staying with Claire for a few weeks while he took a training course in the city. She had agreed quickly when her sister asked, not thinking much of it. She had always cared for Ethan, and she knew he needed a temporary place. But still, she had grown used to living alone. After her divorce, the silence of the house had become a strange comfort to her. It was steady, even if it sometimes felt like a reminder of everything she had lost. That morning, the sky outside was pale gray, the kind of color that suggested the sun was just beginning to rise. Claire made coffee, letting the warm smell fill the kitchen. She tried to focus on the day ahead, thinking about her patients, her shift, and the long list of tasks waiting for her at the hospital. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. Something about having him there felt unexpectedly comforting. Like a kind of company she had forgotten how much she missed. She took a slow sip of her coffee. For a moment, the house felt calm again, almost peaceful. Then, just as she placed her cup on the counter, she heard the bathroom door open. The sound was small, but sharp enough to break the stillness of the morning. Claire turned instinctively toward the hallway. Ethan stepped out of the bathroom, but he didn't look like himself. His face had lost its color, and his expression was tight with something she couldn't quite name. His shoulders were tense, and his breath shook slightly, as if he had just experienced something emotional he didn't know how to process. Claire's heart jumped. "Ethan, are you okay?" she asked immediately. He looked up at her, and she saw uncertainty and embarrassment flicker across his face. He opened his mouth to answer, but stopped, lowering his gaze as if he needed a second to gather himself. "Aunt Claire," he said softly, his voice low and uneven. I didn't mean to scare you." Her worry deepened. She moved closer, trying to read his expression. "What happened? Did something go wrong?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, still avoiding her eyes. "It's not anything dangerous, I promise. But something happened in the bathroom, and it surprised me." He let out a short breath. "I wasn't prepared for it." Claire's mind raced through possibilities. Maybe he felt dizzy. Maybe he remembered something upsetting. Maybe the stress of his training had finally caught up with him. She could tell this wasn't physical. The look on his face wasn't pain. It was emotion. Something internal. "Ethan," she said gently, "you're shaking. Please tell me what's wrong." He finally lifted his eyes, and Claire saw something she hadn't expected: vulnerability. Not the kind that came from fear, but the kind that came from holding emotions for too long without sharing them. "Aunt Claire, I just need a minute," he murmured. "I'll explain. I need to breathe first." He walked past her, heading toward the living room. Claire stood frozen for a moment, watching him with a worrying mixture of concern and confusion. She wasn't used to seeing him like this. Ethan had always been steady, calm, self-controlled. To see him shaken like that made a protective feeling rise inside. Her own instinct she hadn't felt since her divorce. It caught her by surprise. She followed him slowly into the living room. Ethan sat down on the edge of the couch. Leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. He looked lost in thought, almost trapped in whatever emotion had taken hold of him in that bathroom. Claire remained quiet for a moment, giving him the space he needed. But the worry inside her grew stronger with each second he stayed silent. After a long breath, Ethan finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to start the morning like this." "You don't have to apologize," Claire replied softly. "Just talk to me. I'm here." Ethan swallowed hard, as if the words he needed to say were heavy. "Something happened when I looked in the bathroom mirror. It wasn't anything bad or scary. It was emotional. More emotional than I expected. And I wasn't ready for it." Claire frowned carefully. trying to understand. Emotional how? He hesitated, pressing his lips together. I've been feeling disconnected for months. Like I'm just moving through my days. After college ended, everything felt confusing. Everyone around me seemed to know what they were doing, where they were going, who they were becoming. But I didn't. I felt like I was stuck in place, like nothing made sense anymore. Claire felt a pang in her chest. She knew the feeling to losing direction, drowning in uncertainty. Pretending everything was fine because it was easier than explaining the truth. Ethan continued, I haven't told anyone. Not my friends, not my mom, not anyone. I didn't want to worry people. But this morning when I looked in the mirror, something felt different. I felt grounded. I felt like I wasn't completely lost. And I don't know why it hit me so hard, but it did. He paused, letting out a shaky sigh. And then I realized it was because I'm here. In your home. I felt safe, Aunt Claire. And I haven't felt safe like that in a long time. Claire's breath caught. She didn't expect that. She didn't expect that simply offering him a place to stay had touched him so deeply. She also didn't expect the warmth she felt hearing his words, the quiet satisfaction that she had given him something he needed. Something she hadn't been able to give anyone in years. Her voice softened. Ethan, you're not alone. Not here, and not in anything you're feeling. Ethan looked up at her, eyes filled with sincerity. It was overwhelming seeing myself like that, seeing a version of myself that didn't look lost. I didn't know how to handle it, so I stepped out of the bathroom too fast. I didn't want you to see me emotional, but you did. Claire took a slow breath. There's nothing wrong with being emotional. It just means you're human. I know, he whispered, but it caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for it at all. The room fell quiet for a moment. Morning light slowly crept through the window, spreading across the wooden floor and brushing softly against Ethan's shoulders. Claire watched him, seeing both the young man he had become and the boy she used to help take care of. But this wasn't a child needing comfort. This was an adult who had been carrying too much alone. The silence between them didn't feel awkward, it felt honest. Claire finally broke it with a gentle voice. Ethan, thank you for telling me. I'm glad you felt something positive. I'm glad you felt safe. That matters. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression easing. Does. More than I thought it would. Claire felt something shift in her chest, not romantic, not confusing, just deeply human. A sense of closeness she hadn't felt in years. A sense that maybe healing could happen quietly, in moments like this. She placed a careful hand on his shoulder. Take your time today, she said. You don't have to rush anything. You're allowed to feel whatever you feel. Ethan let out a long breath, as if releasing a weight. Thank you. Really, as the morning light grew stronger, Claire realized she had not been prepared either. She hadn't been prepared for how much she cared, for how deeply his vulnerability would affect her, or for the unexpected comfort she felt simply having him there. She didn't know what the next days would bring, but she felt something new growing between them, not something inappropriate, not something unclear. Just a connection made of shared loneliness, shared understanding, and shared healing. And she sensed that this moment, this one morning, was only the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Ethan sat quietly on the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, his fingers woven tightly together. The tension in his posture was new to Claire. She had seen him thoughtful before, even worried at times, but this was different. This was heavier, deeper, and clearly something he had been carrying for much longer than a single morning. Claire moved closer, lowering herself onto the couch with a gentle caution, unsure how close she should sit. She didn't want to overwhelm him, but she also didn't want to make him feel alone. The room was still dim from the early morning light, and the silence between them felt delicate, like something that might break if she moved too quickly. Ethan finally lifted his head. His expression had softened, but the weight behind his eyes was still there. I'm sorry, he said again, his voice quiet, almost apologetic. You don't need to be sorry, Claire answered softly. You scared me, yes, but you didn't do anything wrong. Just tell me what happened." He took a slow breath, his chest rising and falling as if the air itself felt heavy. "I woke up feeling numb. That's the truth. I brushed it off like I always do. I told myself to keep moving, keep going, act normal. I walked into the bathroom half asleep, expecting nothing, just another morning starting too early." He paused, thinking through the moment again. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize the expression on my own face. It wasn't sadness or fear or anger. It was something I haven't felt in a long time. I felt calm, and that calmness hit me harder than all the stress I've been carrying. Claire listened carefully. She wasn't used to him opening up so honestly. In the past, Ethan always tried to remain strong, always tried to avoid worrying anyone. Seeing him speak so openly now made her heart ache in a way she didn't expect. Ethan continued. "These last few months have been rough. Not because of anything specific. Just life. After graduation, everything felt unclear. Everyone around me seemed to have a direction. They had plans, jobs, relationships, dreams. But I felt like I was standing still, watching everyone else move forward. And I didn't want anyone to know how lost I felt. So I smiled. I pretended. I acted like things were fine." He clenched his hands tighter, as if he were afraid to let go of something he had been holding inside. But pretending gets exhausting. Really exhausting. Claire felt a lump grow in her throat. She knew exactly what he meant. She remembered doing the same thing after her marriage ended, smiling when she didn't feel like it, pretending she was fine so no one would ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. In that moment, she didn't just understand him. She felt connected to him in a way she hadn't expected. Ethan breathed out slowly. "When I saw myself in the mirror today, I didn't see the lost person I've been trying to hide. I saw someone who didn't feel alone anymore, someone who felt safe. And for some reason, it made me emotional in a way I couldn't control. I didn't want you to see that. I didn't want to start your morning with my problems." Claire reached out, hesitating only for a second before placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're not a problem," she said quietly. "You're family, and you're allowed to feel things. You're allowed to have moments like this." Otto swallowed, his jaw tightening. "It's strange," he said. "I've been trying to feel okay for months. But this morning, something about being here in this house made me feel something real again. I didn't know how badly I needed that." Claire's voice softened further. "What exactly made you feel that way?" He looked at her, and for a moment his eyes softened with something warm and sincere. "You," he said simply. "Your presence, your home, the way everything here feels calm. You didn't try to fix me. You didn't ask 1,000 questions. You just welcomed me like you always have, and that made me feel anchored." The word anchored settled heavily in Claire's chest. She had not expected that her quiet home, her steady presence, her simple morning routine could have such an impact. She didn't think of herself as someone who brought peace to others anymore. After years of heartbreak and loneliness, she sometimes wondered if she had anything left to give emotionally. Hearing Ethan say those words reminded her that she still carried warmth inside her. Warmth she thought she had lost. Ethan rubbed his hands over his face. "I know it sounds dramatic, but when you felt unsteady for so long, one moment of calm can hit you harder than anything else." Claire nodded. She understood that more deeply than he could ever know. "There's nothing dramatic about feeling human," she said. "Nothing dramatic about needing comfort. We all do." Ethan's shoulders lowered slightly, as if releasing a pressure he had been holding for too long. "I guess what scared me wasn't the emotion itself. It was how unexpected it was. One minute I was brushing my teeth, the next I felt like I could breathe again." He looked down again, and part of me didn't know if it was okay to feel that way. Claire tilted her head gently. "Why wouldn't it be okay?" His voice dropped. "Because I don't want to depend on anyone. I don't want to become someone who needs someone else just to feel steady. That's not fair to them." Claire shook her head. "You're not depending on me. You're simply allowing yourself to feel supported. That's not a weakness. It's something most people never let themselves have. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing a little more. It's been a long time since someone talked to me like this, he admitted. She gave him a small, warm smile. Then maybe you've needed it longer than you realized. The room grew quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a soft silence, a healing kind of silence, the kind that didn't require words. Ethan leaned back against the couch, finally letting his body relax. The morning sun slipped through the curtains, lighting the room with a gentle warmth. The light brushed against his face, making him look calmer, younger, and more at peace than he had when he stepped out of the bathroom minutes earlier. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," said quietly. "I just wanted to be honest." "You did the right thing," Claire replied. "Honesty makes things clearer, not complicated." He looked at her again, this time with gratitude quietly shining behind his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "Really." Claire felt something warm bloom inside her. Not romantic, but deeply emotional, deeply human. It felt good to be needed. It felt good to matter to someone. It felt good to provide comfort in a world that didn't always offer it. She hadn't realized how empty her home had felt until Ethan arrived. She hadn't realized how quiet her heart had been until she heard someone else speak their truth inside her walls. "You're welcome," she whispered, "and you're safe here, for as long as you need." Ethan nodded, a small, hopeful smile forming the kind of smile that only comes after a long period of quiet suffering. A smile that suggested healing was beginning. Slowly but surely, the light continued to spread through the room, touching both of them gently. And Claire understood something in that moment she wasn't prepared for. How deeply this morning would move her. She wasn't prepared to feel this much empathy or this much connection. She wasn't prepared for the warmth that had quietly returned to her home. But she didn't want to push it away. She'll let herself feel it. She let him feel it. And she understood that this emotional morning, this unexpected, honest moment between them was not an ending, but the quiet beginning of something healing, something human, something neither of them had expected, but both needed more than they realized.